Hey everyone, it's Stephanie. Today I want to talk to you guys about something that many language learners struggle with, the feeling that you're putting in so much effort into learning Spanish, but you're not really seeing the results you want. If you've ever felt like this during your language learning journey, trust me, you're not alone. Learning a language can be challenging, and it's easy to feel like you're stuck in a rut. Maybe you're spending hours studying vocab and vocabulary, but when it's time to use that information in a conversation, you have a hard time keeping up or expressing yourself clearly. Or maybe you're having a hard time remembering the new information that you're learning despite all the time and energy that you're putting into it. The good news is that by making simple changes and adjustments to your strategies, you can start seeing the progress that you're working so hard for. In this video, I want to share some strategies with you that countless of Spanish learners have used to help break through those plateaus and achieve their learning goals. Before we dive into the solutions, let's take a look at some of the common challenges that Spanish learners face. Do any of these sound familiar to you? Feeling overwhelmed by the sheer amount of vocabulary and grammar rules to learn. Struggling to remember and use new words and phrases in conversations. Feeling stuck in your head trying to translate word for word from English to Spanish. Losing motivation and feeling like you're just not making progress no matter how hard you work. If you've experienced any of those challenges, I want you to know that it is not a reflection of your intelligence or motivation. Learning a language is a complex process. It's natural to face obstacles along the way. The key is to recognize when your current approach isn't working and that it might be time to try a new strategy. Now that we've identified some common challenges, let's talk about how we can address them. The first step is to simplify the language you're learning and to optimize some study habits. One of the most effective ways to simplify language is to focus on vocabulary in chunks. Instead of memorizing individual words, try learning sets of words that go together naturally. For example, you can start learning some sentence starters like en cuanto a or con respecto a. By learning these chunks of words, you'll be able to start sentences much easily and quicker. Another tip is to learn verbs with the appropriate preposition. In Spanish, verbs often appear with certain prepositions, and these combinations can change the meaning of the verb. For instance, enamorarse de means to fall in love with, while pensar en means to think about. By learning verbs with their prepositions, you'll be able to avoid confusion and learn how to use them correctly in context. When learning grammar, focus on simple patterns that are easy to use. Memorize them and then change the words as needed to fit any situation. For example, the phrase es importante que will always trigger the subjunctive, and if you memorize that, you'll be able to fill in the rest with a different verb depending on what you're trying to say. By learning these patterns, you'll be able to make correct sentences even if you haven't seen that exact combination of words before. Now, let's talk about optimizing your study habits. One of the most important things that you can do is to break up your studying into different times throughout the day. You don't want to try to cram hours of studying into one setting. Instead, try breaking it up into shorter, more focused settings that are spread out. Here's an example schedule that has worked well for me and many of my students. In the morning, you might spend 15 to 20 minutes learning new material, like some vocabulary words or verb and preposition combinations, or even some grammatical structures. Then, in the afternoon, try spending another 15 to 20 minutes reviewing what you learned that morning. You can practice using it by creating your own sentences, and it's also a good time to try and read some articles or some books in Spanish. I also like to watch some short videos in Spanish, and this helps expose me to authentic Spanish language. In the evening, try to spend another 15 to 20 minutes before bed reviewing all the material that you learned that day. Spend a few minutes going over some flashcards or writing out some practice sentences or even reading a few more pages of a Spanish book or novel. By breaking up your study sessions, you're going to be able to maintain focus and you're likely to avoid burnout. And by reviewing the material multiple times throughout the day, you'll increase your retention and be able to use that new material in real-life Spanish conversations. Remember, learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. The key is to remain consistent. Even on the days when you feel tired or unmotivated, try spending at least a few minutes each day to make sure that you're mastering and retaining what you're learning. When I was first learning Spanish, I really struggled with retaining all of the new information, the vocabulary and the grammar. And it wasn't until I started breaking up my study sessions into multiple times per day that I started to see real progress. By dedicating just 15 to 20 minutes a day, I was finally able to see some real improvement, and I was able to use my Spanish more confidently as I spoke with native speakers. So now that we've covered some tips for simplifying the language and optimizing our study habits, it's time to move on to the next crucial step in learning a language, improving our conversation skills and building confidence. One of the biggest obstacles that language learners face is the fear of speaking. We have this idea that we have to have perfectly constructed sentences already in our minds before we even open our mouths to speak. But this is actually holding you back. Here's the thing. Conversations are time sensitive. If you take too long trying to think about and formulate what you want to say, you're going to miss your opportunity to add to the discussion. The key is to start thinking of language in terms of smaller phrases that you can connect together, rather than trying to construct complete sentences and translate them in your head. One strategy that I found incredibly helpful is to use sentence starters. Sentence starters are words that you can use at the beginning of a sentence, but they also give you time to think about what you want to say next. Some examples of sentence starters in Spanish include pues, en mi opinión, la verdad es, and hablando de. By starting your sentence with one of these sentence starters, you're signaling to your partner that you have something to say, and you're giving yourself a moment to collect your thoughts. Here's an example of how you might use a sentence starter in a conversation. ¿Qué opinas de la nueva película de superhéroes? Pues, la verdad es que me pareció un poco exagerada. See how person B used sentence starters like pues and la verdad es to give them a little time to formulate their opinions? Using sentence starters is a much more natural way to participate in conversations rather than trying to think and translate of complete sentences in your head. Finally, remember that making mistakes is a normal part of the language learning process. Don't be afraid to take risks and put yourself out there. The more you do, the more confident and comfortable you're going to become using your Spanish. When I first started having conversations in Spanish, I would freeze up because I was just so worried that I would make a mistake. But once I started using some sentence starters and expressing my thoughts in smaller chunks, I realized that I could participate in the conversations, and it was actually a little bit easier than I thought it would be. Now, I actually enjoy the challenge of participating in a conversation in Spanish. I like to see how much I can understand and how much I can actually communicate. Wow, we've covered a lot in this video. Let's just take a moment to recap the main ideas and talk about how you can apply these strategies to your own language learning journey. First, we discussed the importance of simplifying the language by learning vocabulary in chunks, focusing on verb preposition combinations, and mastering simple grammatical patterns. By breaking the language down into smaller, more manageable chunks, you'll be able to learn and retain the information much more effectively. Next, we talked about optimizing your study habits by breaking up your study sessions into a few small chunks a day. Remember, even just 15 to 20 minutes a few times a day is going to make a huge impact in the amount you're able to learn and retain. Finally, we covered some strategies for improving your conversational skills and gaining confidence, like using sentence starters, or focusing on active listening and embracing the learning process, mistakes and all. I know that learning a language can feel overwhelming, and you can get discouraged if you feel like you're not making progress as quickly as you'd like, but I want to encourage you to keep going, even if it gets rough. Remember, every small step you take towards your language goals is a victory worth celebrating. Every new vocabulary word you learn, every new sentence you construct, every conversation you hold in Spanish. These are all evidence that you are making progress towards your Spanish language goals. If you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with all your fellow Spanish learners. If you're looking for more tips and resources, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and check out the Unacademy app, where you'll find more exercises and in-depth lessons. Hasta luego, mis amigos! See you later, my friends! Keep growing, keep learning, keep shining. Tú lo puedes hacer. You can do it.